The stars had never looked so bright. Danny Cole stood at the window of the starship Endeavour, watching the endless black of space stretch out before him. He was 42 years old, a commander in the Earth fleet, and today was the most important day in human history. 3 hours ago, an alien ship had appeared near Jupiter. It was massive, almost the size of a small moon, and it glowed with a soft golden light. For 200 years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. Danny took a deep breath and turned away from the window. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. There was Morgan, his second in command, a young woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. There was Ben Torres, the pilot, who had flown more missions than anyone else in the fleet. And there was old Sam Griffin, the engineer, who had been flying ships since before Danny was born. "They want one person," Danny said quietly. "Just one human to board their ship." Stepped forward. "Sir, we don't know anything about them. It could be a trap." "It's not a trap," Danny replied. He didn't know how he knew this, but he felt it deep in his bones. "They've been watching us for a long time. If they wanted to hurt us, they would have done it already." The message from the alien ship had been simple. They called themselves and they had ruled this part of the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their princess wanted to meet a human, not a president, not a general, not a scientist, just a regular human who could answer her questions honestly. Earth's leaders had argued for hours about who to send. In the end, they chose Danny. The psychological tests said he was the most honest person in the fleet. He didn't play games, didn't tell lies, didn't try to make himself look better than he was. He was just a simple man who loved his daughter and missed his wife and wanted to do the right thing. "I'm going," Danny said. "You're in charge while I'm gone." She nodded, but he could see the worry in her eyes. "Come back safe, Commander." Danny smiled. "I'll do my best." The shuttle ride to the alien ship took 20 minutes. As Danny got closer, he could see the details of the massive vessel. It wasn't made of metal like human ships. It seemed to be made of crystal, or maybe light itself. Patterns moved across its surface like living things, beautiful and strange. A door opened in the side of the ship, and Danny flew his shuttle inside. He landed in a hangar that was bigger than any building on Earth. The walls glowed with soft colors that changed slowly, like a sunset that never ended. When he stepped out of his shuttle, they were waiting for him. They were tall, at least 8 feet, with silver skin that shimmered like moonlight on water. Their eyes were the most amazing thing Danny had ever seen. They looked like galaxies, filled with tiny stars that swirled and danced. They wore robes of flowing light, and they moved with a grace that made Danny feel clumsy and small. There were 12 of them standing in a half circle, but Danny's eyes were drawn to the one in the center. She was different from the others, somehow more present, more real. A crown of light floated above her head, and when she looked at Danny, he felt like she was seeing everything he had ever been or would ever be. This was Princess, third heir to the eternal throne of the Empire. "Human," she said, and her voice was like music, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "You are smaller than I expected." Danny almost laughed. "Yeah, we get that a lot." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. It was hard to tell with an alien face. "Come," she said, "walk with me." She turned and glided down a long hallway, and Danny followed. The others stayed behind, watching him with their galaxy eyes. Danny felt their stares on his back, but he kept his head up and his shoulders straight. He was representing all of humanity. He couldn't afford to look scared. The hallway opened into a garden. At least, Danny thought it was a garden. There were plants he had never seen before, flowers that sang soft melodies, trees with leaves made of crystal. A stream of liquid light flowed through the center, and small creatures that looked like floating jellyfish drifted through the air. Princess stopped beside the stream and turned to face him. "My empire has existed for 12,000 years, she said. "In that time, we have met 417 intelligent species. We have watched them grow, helped them advance, guided them through the darkness of space. Danny nodded, not sure what to say. Every single one of them, continued, asked the same question when they first met us. Do you know what that question was? Danny thought about it. What can you give us? Yes, her eyes studied him carefully. They wanted our technology, our weapons, our knowledge. They wanted power or protection or resources. They always wanted something. She took a step closer to him, and Danny could smell something like flowers and starlight. So tell me, human, what do you want from us? What does your species desire? Danny opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He thought about Earth, about all the problems they faced. Climate change, disease, war. There were 1,000 things humanity could ask for. Technology to fix their planet. Medicine to cure their sick. Weapons to protect themselves from threats they couldn't even imagine. But that wasn't why he was here. That wasn't why humanity had looked up at the stars for thousands of years, wondering and hopping and dreaming. Nothing, Danny said quietly. His eyes widened slightly. Nothing. We don't want anything from you, Danny explained. We just wanted to know we weren't alone, that's all. We looked up at the night sky for so long, wondering if anyone else was out there, wondering if we were the only ones who saw beauty in the stars. Now we know the answer. He smiled, a simple, honest smile. So thank you. Thank you for showing us that the universe isn't empty. That's enough for us. Princess stared at him for a long moment. Her galaxy eyes swirled with emotions Danny couldn't name. In 12,000 years, across hundreds of species, no one had ever given her that answer. She didn't know what to say. For the first time in her very long life, Princess was confused. And deep in her ancient heart, something began to change. 3 days passed on the ship. Danny was given a room that was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed adjusted itself to his body. The walls showed any view he wanted, and food appeared whenever he was hungry. It was like living in a dream. But Danny couldn't relax. He kept thinking about Princess' face when he gave his answer. That look of confusion, of wonder. Something had happened in that moment, something important. He just didn't know what. On the 4th day, a guard came to his room. The guard was even taller than the others, with armor made of solid light and a face that showed no emotion. The council wishes to see you, the guard said. Follow me. Danny stood up and smoothed his uniform. The council. The 17 rulers of the empire. They have questions for you, human. That didn't sound good. Danny followed the guard through winding hallways that seemed to go on forever. They passed windows that showed views of distant galaxies, rooms filled with machines he couldn't understand, and gardens where impossible flowers bloomed in colors that didn't exist on Earth. Finally, they reached a massive door made of pure white light. The guard touched it, and it melted away like morning mist. The chamber beyond was the most impressive thing Danny had ever seen. The walls curved upward in impossible angles, covered with patterns that seemed to move and breathe. The floor hummed with ancient energy, and floating platforms held 17, each one dressed in robes of different colors. At the center on the highest platform sat Princess. Her face was calm, but Danny could see something in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or hope. Human, said a deep voice. Danny looked up at a male with dark silver skin and cold eyes. I am High Counselor. You stand before the ruling council of an empire that spans 1,000 worlds. Choose your words carefully. Danny swallowed hard. I understand. Good, leaned forward, his galaxy eyes narrowing. Your answer to the princess has disturbed us. You claim to want nothing from us. This is either a lie or a sign of mental illness. Which is it? Danny felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help anyone. It's neither, he said, keeping his voice steady. It's just the truth. Impossible, another counselor spoke, a female with pale silver skin and eyes like frozen stars. Every species wants something. Every species seeks to advance itself, to gain power, to survive. This is the fundamental law of the universe. You cannot be different. Danny thought about how to explain it. He thought about who had warned him that the only respected strength and cunning. But Danny wasn't a cunning man. He was just himself. "Where I come from," Danny said slowly, "we have a saying. The best things in life are free: friendship, love, wonder, hope. You can't buy those things. You can't trade for them. They only have value because they're given freely." The counselors murmured among themselves, raised a hand for silence. "Pretty words," he said coldly. "But words are easy. Actions are what matter. And your species' actions tell a different story. War, genocide, the destruction of your own planet. Humans are violent, short-sighted creatures who cannot even stop fighting among themselves." Danny felt the sting of those words because they were true. Humanity had done terrible things throughout history. They had hurt each other, destroyed their environment, and made choices that seemed unforgivable. But that wasn't the whole story. "You're right," Danny admitted. "We've done terrible things. We've made mistakes that cost millions of lives. We've been cruel and stupid and selfish." He paused, looking around at the ancient faces watching him. "But we've also done beautiful things. We've written music that makes people cry. We've created art that captures the human soul. We've loved each other so deeply that we've sacrificed everything for the people we care about. We've faced darkness again and again, and somehow we keep finding our way back to the light." Princess leaned forward slightly. Her eyes were fixed on Danny with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Human," she said softly, "I have one more question for you. One inquiry that has haunted my people for thousands of years." The chamber fell silent. Even stopped talking, his cold eyes curious despite himself. "In all your wars," continued, "all your suffering, all your endless struggles on that small blue world, why do you continue? Why do humans hope when hope is irrational? When the numbers say you should fail, when logic says you should surrender, why do you keep fighting?" Danny felt the weight of that question pressing down on him. It was the kind of question that had no easy answer, no clever response that would satisfy everyone. He thought about his wife, who had died 3 years ago from a sickness that should have been curable. He thought about her smile, the way she laughed, the way she held his hand even at the end when the pain was too much. She had never stopped hopping. Even when the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, she had smiled and told Danny that everything would be okay. He thought about his daughter, Lily, who was 12 years old and waiting for him back on Earth. She had her mother's smile and her father's stubbornness. When she was 8, she had decided she wanted to be an astronaut. Everyone told her it was too hard, that the odds were against her, that she should choose something easier. She had ignored them all and kept working toward her dream. That was humanity. That was what it meant to be human. "Because giving up is easy," Danny said finally. "Anyone can do that. When things get hard, when everything seems hopeless, it's easy to just stop trying. But hopping, keeping faith when everything tells you not to, that takes strength. That takes courage." He met's eyes, and for a moment it felt like they were the only two people in the room. "We hope because we choose to hope," Danny continued. "Not because it makes sense. Not because we're sure we'll win. We hope because hope is the most human thing there is. It's what makes us who we are." He took a deep breath. "And if there's one thing we've learned in our short history, it's that the universe respects those who refuse to quit. Even when we lose, even when we fall, we get back up. Again and again and again. Because that's what humans do." The chamber was silent. The counselors stared at Danny with expressions he couldn't read. His cold eyes had softened slightly, though his face remained stern. But Princess did something that shocked everyone in the room. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of her silver lips. But in 12,000 years, no human had ever made a royal smile. And in that moment, something changed. Not just for Danny, not just for but for two entire civilizations. The universe would never be the same. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful. Princess had done something that shocked the entire council. She had requested Danny Cole as her personal liaison. This meant he would stay on the ship, walk beside her, learn about her people, and teach her about his. High Counselor had argued against it for hours. A human walking beside royalty. It was unthinkable. Humans were a young species, barely more than children compared to the... They had no business being so close to the third heir of the eternal throne, but had power that even could not challenge. Her word was law in matters of her own court, and so Danny stayed. Every morning would come to his room and they would walk together through the endless halls of the ship. She showed him things that made his head spin with wonder. The engine of forever, a machine that had been running for 10,000 years without stopping. The memory gardens, where the thoughts of ancient were stored in crystals that sang when you touched them. The observatory of souls, where you could look out at the universe and see the light of stars that had died before Earth was born. But it was the archives of eternity that changed everything for Danny. The archives were located deep in the heart of the ship, in a chamber so vast that Danny couldn't see the walls or ceiling. Millions of glowing orbs floated in the darkness, each one containing the complete history of a different species. "This is our greatest treasure," said softly as they walked among the floating lights. "The stories of every civilization we have ever encountered, their births, their struggles, their achievements, everything they were, preserved forever." Danny reached out and touched one of the orbs. Images flooded his mind, showing him a world of purple oceans and creatures that flew through the sky on wings of flame. He saw their cities rise, their art flourish, their people laugh and love and dream. Then he saw them fade. The joy left their eyes. The creativity dried up. They stopped building, stopped dreaming, stopped hopping. They became shadows of what they once were, going through the motions of life without any real purpose. Danny pulled his hand back, his heart heavy. What happened to them? His face was sad. "We saved them." Danny didn't understand. "You saved them, but they looked dead inside." "Yes." Walked deeper into the archives and Danny followed. "This is the great tragedy of the Empire, Danny Cole. A secret we do not share with outsiders, but I want you to understand." She stopped and turned to face him, her galaxy eyes filled with ancient pain. "When we meet a young species, we offer them everything. Technology to solve their problems, medicine to cure their diseases, protection from enemies they cannot defeat. We give them paradise." "That sounds good," Danny said slowly, sensing something terrible was coming. "It should be good, but it is not," gestured at the floating orbs around them. "Of the 417 species we have uplifted, 312 have fallen into what we call the Great Silence. They stop creating. They stop striving. They stop dreaming. They simply exist, taking what we give them, waiting for nothing." Danny felt cold despite the warmth of the chamber. "Why?" "Because we took away their struggle." His voice was barely a whisper. "We solved all their problems, and in doing so, we destroyed the thing that made them alive. Purpose, challenge, the need to grow and improve and become something more than they were." She led him to another part of the archives, where a large window looked out into space. Below them, Danny could see a planet covered in beautiful buildings and perfect gardens. It looked like paradise. "This is Hollow World 7, said. "Home to the people. 2,000 years ago, they were builders and dreamers, artists and warriors. Now." She touched the window and the view zoomed in. Danny saw the creatures with 4 arms and skin like polished wood. They walked slowly through their perfect streets, their eyes empty, their movements mechanical. They ate the food the provided. They lived in the homes the built. They breathed, but they did not live. "They are not dead," said, "but they are not alive either. They exist in a state between, sustained by our charity but spiritually empty. We gave them everything, and in doing so, we took away everything that mattered." Danny watched the hollow creatures below, and he felt a deep sadness mixed with something else. Understanding. "That's why my answer confused you," he said quietly. "That's why you wanted to know about hope." Nodded. "In 12,000 years, we have never met a species like yours. By every measurement, you should have surrendered long ago. Your planet tried to kill you with ice ages and plagues and natural disasters. You fought wars that killed millions of your own people. You damaged your environment so badly that your own survival was threatened." She turned to look at him, and there were tears in her galaxy eyes. Actual tears, glowing softly like liquid starlight. "Yet you never gave up. You never fell into the great silence. Instead, you reached for the stars. You built ships and flew into the darkness, searching for others like you, not for power or protection or technology, just for connection, just for hope." Danny didn't know what to say. He thought about Earth, about all the problems they faced. Climate change was still a threat. Poverty still existed. People still fought over stupid things. Humanity was far from perfect. But they were still fighting, still hopping, still dreaming of a better tomorrow. "You terrify my council," said softly. "Not because you are strong. They have weapons that could destroy your planet in seconds. You are not a threat to us physically." She stepped closer to him, so close that he could see the stars swirling in her eyes. "You terrify them because you are impossible. You should not exist. By every calculation, every model, every prediction, you should have fallen into the great silence centuries ago. Yet here you stand, asking for nothing but friendship." Danny smiled sadly. "Maybe that's our secret. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten." "No," reached out and placed her silver hand on his chest over his heart. It was warm, warmer than he expected. "It is something far more profound, something my people have forgotten, something I intend to learn." She looked into his eyes, and Danny saw something there he had never expected to see in an alien face. "Hope." "Teach me, Danny Cole," Princess whispered. "Teach me how to hope again." And standing there in the archives of eternity, surrounded by the ghosts of countless civilizations, Danny made a promise he would spend the rest of his life keeping. He would teach the most powerful empire in the galaxy how to be human. 6 months had passed since Danny Cole first stepped onto the ship. In that time, everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Trade agreements had been signed. Cultural exchanges had begun. Human scientists were learning things that would have taken centuries to discover on their own. But none of that mattered now. Danny stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic display in front of him. The image showed a wound in space itself, a tear in the fabric of reality that pulsed with dark energy. Around it, stars were dying. Their light was being sucked into the void, consumed by something ancient and hungry. "The Devourers," said quietly, standing beside him. Her voice was steady, but Danny could hear the fear beneath it. "We thought they were just stories, old legends from before the Empire was born. We were wrong." The council chamber was full. All 17 rulers had gathered, along with military commanders, scientists, and advisors. Morgan was there too, representing Earth's interests. She had come aboard the ship a month ago, along with a small human delegation. High Counselor stepped forward, his face grim. "The rift appeared 3 days ago at the edge of known space. Since then, it has consumed 4 star systems. 14 billion citizens are dead. 3 colony worlds have been completely destroyed." The chamber was silent. Danny had never seen the look scared before. They had always seemed so confident, so superior, so certain of their place in the universe. Now they looked lost. "What are these Devourers?" Danny asked. "Where do they come from?" An old scientist stepped forward. Her name was Elder, and she was the keeper of ancient knowledge. "The Devourers are beings of pure entropy. They exist outside our universe in the space between spaces. They feed on energy, on matter, on life itself. They are older than the stars." "Can they be stopped?" Shook her head sadly. We do not know. The last time the Devourers appeared was before they achieved space travel. According to the records, they consumed everything in their path until they simply stopped, returned to wherever they came from. We do not know why. Raised his hand. The Council has discussed our response. Our fleet will begin evacuation procedures immediately. We will move our people away from the rift, establish new colonies in safe territories, and wait for the storm to pass. This is the way. It is how we have survived for 12,000 years. Some of the counselors nodded in agreement, others looked uncertain, and Princess looked angry. "No," she said firmly. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. "Your Highness," said carefully, "the Devourers cannot be fought. Our weapons have no effect on them. Our ships are destroyed before they can even get close. Fighting is suicide. And running is death." Stepped forward, her silver skin glowing with emotion. "Look at what we have become. Look at what our way has made us. We are caretakers of dying species, hoarders of knowledge we no longer use. We exist, but we do not live." She turned to address the entire council. Her voice rising with passion Danny had never heard from her before. "For 12,000 years, we have chosen safety over courage. We have preserved ourselves while watching other civilizations fade into the great silence. We tell ourselves we are wise, that survival is the highest virtue. But what is the point of surviving if we are too afraid to truly live?" His face hardened. "You would have us throw away everything, sacrifice our people in a battle we cannot win." "I would have us fight," replied. "Not because we will win, but because surrender is a death slower than any devourer could give us." She gestured to Danny who stood at the edge of the chamber. "These humans have taught me something, something we have forgotten. Hope is not a calculation. It is not a logical decision based on probability of success. Hope is a choice, a decision to stand up and fight even when the odds are against you." Danny felt his heart pounding as continued. "The Devourers will consume us whether we run or fight. Running will only delay the inevitable. But fighting might inspire others. Fighting might show the galaxy that there are things worth dying for. And fighting might give us a chance." "A chance?" laughed bitterly. "What chance? Our weapons cannot hurt them. Our ships cannot survive their presence. What could we possibly do?" Elder stepped forward slowly. "There is one possibility. A weapon developed thousands of years ago and sealed away because it was too dangerous to use. The Star Shard. It can tear holes in reality itself, potentially sealing the rift permanently." "The Star Shard was deemed too unstable," said. "Using it could destroy everything within 100 light years." "Yes," agreed. "But if the rift continues to expand, everything within 1,000 light years will be destroyed anyway. The Star Shard is a risk, but it is the only risk that offers hope." The chamber erupted in argument. Counselors shouted at each other, some supporting, others backing. The noise was deafening. Then Morgan stepped forward and raised her hand. The humans had been silent throughout the meeting, watching and listening, but now had something to say. "Excuse me," she said loudly. They fell silent, turning to look at the small human woman who dared to interrupt their council. "Back on Earth," said calmly, "we have a saying. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It means if you never try, you definitely fail. But if you try, even if the odds are bad, at least you have a chance." She looked around at the ancient faces watching her. "I've only known them for a short time, but I've learned a lot. You're smart, powerful, and wise. You've built an empire that has lasted longer than humanity has existed. But somewhere along the way, you stopped taking shots. You stopped risking. You stopped hopping." She smiled slightly. "Humanity isn't smarter than you. We're not stronger or wiser. But we're really, really good at trying stupid things that shouldn't work. And sometimes, against all odds, they do." Princess looked at with gratitude, then turned to the council. "I am calling for a vote. Who stands with me? Who chooses to fight?" One by one, the younger began to rise. Scientists who had forgotten the thrill of discovery, warriors who had never been tested in real battle, artists who had not created anything new in centuries. They stood with their princess, choosing hope over safety. By the end, nearly half the council was standing. Looked around at his divided people, his face unreadable. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Very well," he said. "We fight. May the stars forgive us for our foolishness." Turned to Danny, her eyes shining with determination and fear and hope all mixed together. "Will humanity stand with us?" Danny thought of Earth, of Lily waiting for him to come home, of who had never stopped fighting even at the end, of every human who had ever looked at impossible odds and said, "Let's try anyway." He smiled. You didn't even have to ask. Battle at the Rift was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. 300 warships had come out of retirement, ancient vessels that had not fired their weapons in thousands of years. Their crews were a mix of old warriors who remembered how to fight and young volunteers who had never known war. They flew in formation toward the darkness, their crystal hulls glowing with power that had been sleeping for centuries. Beside them flew the human fleet. 47 ships. That was all humanity could send on such short notice. 47 small, fragile vessels made of metal and hope. The Endeavor led the way, with Danny Cole at the command console and Morgan coordinating communications with the... From the bridge of her flagship, Princess watched the human ships keeping pace with her own. They were so small, she thought, so breakable, and yet they had come anyway, flying into certain death because their friends had asked for help. "Human fleet this is," she said over the communication channel. "You can still turn back. No one would blame you. This is not your fight." Danny's voice came back immediately. "With respect, Princess, that's not how friendship works. Your fight is our fight. Besides, we didn't come all this way just to watch." Smiled despite herself. Stubborn, impossible humans. The rift was visible now, a swirling wound of darkness that seemed to eat the stars around it. Things moved within its depths, shadows of shadows, shapes that hurt to look at. The Devourers were waiting. "All ships," commanded, "begin attack sequence Alpha. Target the outer edge of the rift. Force them back." The battle began. Weapons lit up the void with beams of pure light. Human missiles streaked toward the darkness, leaving trails of fire behind them. The combined firepower of two civilizations crashed against the rift like waves against a cliff. It wasn't enough. The Devourers emerged from the rift like nightmares given form. They had no real shape, just constantly shifting masses of darkness that consumed everything they touched. Ships were swallowed whole, their crews screaming for a moment before falling silent. Human vessels exploded into fragments that were eaten before they could drift away. Within an hour, half the fleet was gone. "We're losing," said quietly, her face pale as she watched the battle unfold. "Danny, we can't win this." Danny stared at the tactical display, watching more ships disappear. She was right. The Devourers were too powerful, too numerous, too alien to fight. Every strategy failed. Every weapon proved useless. But then he remembered something his grandfather, a man named, had told him when Danny was just a boy. "Son," had said, "it's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog." Danny opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Cole. I know things look bad. I know we're outmatched but I want to tell you something about humans." He took a deep breath. "We've never won a fight by following the rules. We've never beaten impossible odds by playing it safe. Every time humanity has faced extinction, we've survived by doing something crazy, something unexpected, something that shouldn't work but does anyway." He looked then at Ben Torres and Sam Griffin, his crew who had followed him into the darkness without hesitation. "The Devourers don't know how to fight crazy. They've never met anything like us before. So let's show them what happens when you back humans into a corner. He switched channels. Princess, where is the star shard? His voice came back, confused. It's aboard my flagship, but Danny, the calculations say it needs to be detonated inside the rift to seal it. That's a suicide mission. The explosion would destroy anything within 10,000 miles. I know, Danny said calmly. Transfer it to the Endeavor. The channel was silent for a long moment. Danny, no. His voice cracked with emotion. There must be another way. Let me send a ship. Let me go myself. Your people need you, Danny replied. You're the one who taught them to hope again. You have to survive to lead them forward. But me, I'm just one human, and if my life can save both our peoples, that's a trade I'm willing to make. Danny Cole, I forbid it. As Princess of the Empire, I order you to stand down. Danny smiled sadly. Sorry, Princess. Humans are really bad at following orders. The star shard was transferred to the Endeavor in minutes. It was beautiful, Danny thought. A crystal the size of his fist that pulsed with light that seemed to come from another universe entirely. He held it carefully as he walked to the pilot's seat. Ben Sam, get to the escape pods. That's an order. Shook her head. We're not leaving you. You have to. Someone needs to tell Lily what happened. Someone needs to tell her that her dad died saving the galaxy. He smiled through the tears forming in his eyes. She'd probably think that was pretty cool. The crew hugged him one by one. Was last holding him tight for a long moment. You're the best man I've ever known, she whispered. Give them hell. Then they were gone, and Danny was alone. He flew the Endeavor toward the rift. The Devourers came for him, their impossible shapes reaching out like hungry fingers. The ship shook and screamed as it was torn apart piece by piece. But Danny didn't stop. He thought of her smile, her laugh, the way she said she loved him every night before they fell asleep. He thought of Lily, his brave little girl who wanted to touch the stars. He thought of Earth, that small blue marble floating in an endless sea of darkness. And he thought of who had asked him why humans hope. This is why, he thought as he flew into the heart of the rift. This is what hope looks like. He activated the star shard. The universe went white. When the light faded, the rift was gone. The Devourers had vanished. The darkness that had threatened to consume everything had been sealed away, banished to whatever dimension it came from. Screamed Danny's name, ordering every ship to search for survivors. For 3 days they looked. Everyone said it was impossible. Nothing could survive that explosion. The human commander was dead. Then they found the escape pod. It was drifting in the debris field, barely functioning, its life support systems failing. Inside, Danny Cole was unconscious but alive. The blast had thrown him clear at the last second, a 1 in a million chance that should have been impossible. But Danny had never cared much about impossible. He woke up in the medical bay, surrounded by technology that hummed softly around him. Princess was beside him, her silver cheeks streaked with tears that glowed like starlight. You impossible man, she whispered. You should be dead. Danny smiled weakly. Told you, too stubborn. Took his hand, a gesture no royal had ever offered to another species. Her fingers were warm against his skin. Your inquiry, she said softly. When you first came to us, you asked only to know that you were not alone. I can finally answer you. She leaned close, her galaxy eyes meeting his. You are not alone, Danny Cole. You never were, and because of you, neither are we. In the years that followed, humanity joined the Empire not as subjects, but as partners. The old ways crumbled. New alliances formed. Species that had fallen into the great silence began to wake, inspired by the strange creatures from a small blue world who had taught an ancient empire to hope again. And it all began with one inquiry. And one honest answer. And a stubborn man who refused to give up. Because that's what humans do.